Are you serious? Are you serious? I told you, and I thank you for praying, but this was maybe one of the largest storms ever on the planet in history. Super Typhoon Yolanda has come ashore in the Philippines. It was and is a monster. And as it came ashore, CNN News says Super Typhoon Yolanda, perhaps the strongest storm ever, plows across the Philippines. The super typhoon leaving a widespread devastation in its wake. At 4:30 this morning, flooding streets, knocking out power and communication networks in many areas of the hilly island in the region they're in the Philippines. Now remember, the Philippines is made up of 7,000 islands. So this storm went right through the middle of it. It just cut it in half, basically. And at least we know 4 people are dead. We know 4 people are dead. But there's no way to know. There's no communications at all. Everything's been destroyed as far as communications are concerned. The storm had sustaining winds. According to CNN, it got as much as 100. It was maintaining 195 miles an hour. Are you serious? This thing is actually bigger than a Category 5. I mean, it was a monster. It had gusts up to 235 miles an hour as it came ashore. It may be the strongest tropical cyclone to ever hit land anywhere in history, according to CNN. It will take further analysis after the storm passes to establish whether or not it was the record. This thing is really bad, folks. Now, let me just say this. That was CNN reporting. I have a satellite imagery of this super typhoon, and this is just to give you an idea of what this thing looked like from a satellite, or from a not satellite, but from super imaging of this storm. It was absolutely the most perfect storm. In other words, if you had to create a storm with all of the water, the currents, the temperatures, the winds, the lightnings, the rain, the force, if you had to take all the available resources on the planet and had to come up with the perfect storm, this is it. And here's the thing about it. At the same time, there were CMEs. We've been having quite a swarm of solar flares erupting on the sun, which we believe, and I've talked to scientists now, and I had a scientist on our show yesterday, believe that the comet Haiyan is actually, as it's traveling at 4 million miles a day, headed right for the sun, that the electromagnetic pull from the comet Haiyan on the sun is then creating the eruptions on the sun, solar flare eruptions, which in turn is affecting earthquakes on the earth, and we've just had a swarm of them in the last 2 weeks, and storms. And no doubt, this is why you've probably just witnessed the biggest cyclone, typhoon, hurricane in the history of the earth. Will it be the biggest death toll? No. And thank God for that. I believe it's because of the prayers of God's people and tremendous precautions that the Philippine Islands did. But we don't know we do not have a clue what it's done to the people. Let me give you the original reports coming from the early reports about 2 hours ago from the Associated Press. The strongest typhoon maybe ever has slammed into the central Philippines today, November the 8th, 2013, setting off landslides, knocking out power and communication lines in several provinces. At least 4 people are dead, but we know there's no way to know yet. There's no way to get around. There's no way to know. There's no communications. So we just don't know how many people this thing has killed. We don't know what it has done. It is huge. It's unbelievable. It was huge. This fast-paced typhoon, Yolanda, raced across a string of islands from the east to the west of the Philippines. It was coming in, folks, at 195 miles an hour winds. Now, nearly 720,000 people were forced to evacuate their homes. Due to the cutoff of communications, it is impossible to know the full extent of the casualties and the damage. At least 2 people were electrocuted in the storm-related accidents as it first came ashore. 1 person was killed by a fallen tree. Another was killed by lightning. That was as it was just coming ashore. We don't know what it's just done, folks. We don't know what this thing has done. Are you serious? Are you serious? Something biblical is going on with the signs of the second coming of Christ. I say it because I must say it. I proclaim it because it is true. If you go to Luke chapter 21, read with me verse 25. And there shall be signs in the sun, solar flares. We've had a swarm of them. We've had an unbelievable amount of X-class flares that have been erupting in the last 2 weeks. There shall be signs in the sun. We've had it. And in the moon, we're coming into a 4-blood moon cycle. And in the stars. What do you think's going on up there with the comet Haiyan? What? And upon the earth, distress of nations. Wars, rumors of wars. Yes, they speak of peace, but then they speak of war. And now even Secretary of the State of America, John F. Kerry, says, if Israel and Palestine don't sign this deal, there will be extensive violence. And now we have a report yesterday that Yasser Arafat, looks like, was poisoned with polonium radiation. What? Who do you think did it? I mean, everyone's going to blame Israel for it, and they probably did it. They probably assassinated him using the Mossad. And it's not. Why? Because you know how many people Yasser Arafat killed? Listen, wars and rumors of wars is something we're always going to have and always will have. And when they go to say peace, the Pope hands a pen to the president of the Palestinians and says, here, with this pen, you must sign. You have many things you must sign. And Abbas says he takes the pen from the Pope Francis I in the Vatican at Rome. And the president of the Palestinian Authority says, yes, I must sign a peace treaty with Israel with this pen. I mean, they're planning on. John Kerry says we got to get this thing done by April. But folks, April's when the first blood moon over the first of a series of 4 blood moons on the earth. But wait a minute. But wait, there's more. There shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity or confusion, and the sea and the waves roaring. What do you call this super duper typhoon? Yolanda, maybe the biggest storm in history. Let me tell you what else that they're saying about it, at least not from the devastation standpoint, because we don't know what the casualties are or the damage. But we do know that meteorologist Eric Holtus, writing for Quartz says, and he says, this super typhoon with sustaining winds of 195 miles an hour with gusts staggering up to 230. Now CNN's reporting the gusts were at 235. Its intensity has actually ticked slightly above the maximum of 8.0. It's went to 8.1, which means it's bigger than anything they normally record. It's bigger than the biggest standard. And they're saying that it beat Wilma back in 2005. This thing's bigger than that. And Wilma in 2005, according to intensity, was the biggest, strongest storm ever in the Atlantic Ocean. And this storm has beat it by 5 miles per hour in wind, which makes it a member of a very select club of the worst storms in the history of the planet. So this may be the biggest, baddest storm ever. At the same time, you have solar flare eruptions of the sun at the same time. You have a comet ISON. And I had a scientist on my show yesterday. And if you actually go to my Blog Talk Radio archives, the name of my show is The Coming Apocalypse. If you go to Blog Talk Radio to my archives and listen to yesterday's show, November the 7th show, I had a scientist on, and he came on about 1 o'clock or something, about the second hour. We had some technical difficulties getting him on the line. Took us about 10 minutes. We finally got him patched in because he was in the middle of nowhere with a satellite phone. He's a scientist. He does research. And we started talking about these scenarios, the storms, the solar flares. He specifically studies the comet Ison. He said this comet has more than one nucleus. It has two, maybe more, but he can definitely see the two. And as it approaches the sun, it's huge. He said the tail, the debris trail is enormous. It's millions of miles. And as it approaches the sun, it's supposed to do the perihelion, and that is to swing around. That means to whip around the sun. But only comets that are singular nucleus ever survive the perihelion, or the whip. If it has multiple nucleuses, they always blow apart. This might be the first one ever that makes it. But the thing is, if it blows apart, there is so much debris with it. It means it blows it in different directions. Then I asked him, could it throw meteorites or asteroids at us? He said, absolutely it could. I said, can we ever know? He goes, no, we won't know. We are not going to know until it gets to the sun. Will it survive or will it not? We don't know. And then if it does blow up, what's coming at us? We don't know that either till we watch for it. He goes, this is why NASA's being very quiet, because they don't know what to do with this thing. This thing is something like they've never seen before. And if it does survive the sun in the perihelion, then it whips this tail toward the earth, which the earth will then pass through this debris field in January 15th. But we don't know what all's in that field. It's enormous. There is this thing it's got a tail like you wouldn't believe, full of rocks and meteorites and asteroids. We don't know what we're gonna go into. We're gonna have to pass through that. But what's really weird is there was a comet called Y1490 that hit the earth in the year 1490. It hit the earth with such force that it wiped out half of the Chinese Navy. It created a tsunami 700 feet high, bringing ships to the top of mountains in Australia. That comet hit in the year 1490. Well, every so many years, the debris trail from that comet comes into our solar system, and we pass through it. Folks, it's going to blow your mind. On January the 15th, the Earth will be passing through the debris field trail of the comet 1490 and the debris trail from the comet Ison. And they're going to intersect while we're going through at the same intersection. We're all headed for the same spot. And it's January 15th, 2014, just before the start of the blood moons. Here's the key thing to this. We don't know what in the world that means. But first, will the comet Ison survive the sun? We don't know that. But we do know this. Because of its intensity and its size, it is drawing and creating sun flares on the sun, which in turn are creating earthquakes and terrific storms on the earth. And that's why you may have just seen the perfect storm, the biggest ever, that's just come ashore on the Philippines. Now, my wife had a dream, and that dream, she was actually in the Philippines, and she said she was in a building, and people were gathering stuff, trying to get out of there. And she said she kept hearing my voice say, it's tearing the island apart. It's ripping it in half. Now, she's seen water and raging of a lot of different stuff. So we are praying. She gave that warning. I gave that warning yesterday. We're really praying for the Philippines. We're praying for the people there. Please keep lifting them up in prayer. In Jesus' name. Give your life to Jesus Christ. This is the last days.